Gill, you talked about the wildlife population. You're noticing the wildlife populations grow on your farm. Talk to us about how you see your farm as an ecosystem. This is a managed ecosystem, but how do you view that as sort of with a really big picture? Because I noticed you've got partners with quails, and you've got all sorts of little interests in wildlife. Tell us about that interest. Tell us about your farm as an ecosystem as a whole.
We've got into quail, trying to manage quail just for the sport of quail, but also because, the quail are about to go extinct around here. And we found out that we changed the habitat we thin the woods, we get the hardwood out of the woods, and we keep vegetation on the ground in the forest and burn the forest, burn the forest on a schedule. And then we release quail, and hopefully they will, multiply. We also plant feed plots for them and all that kind of thing. And so it's a sort of slow thing coming back. The problem we're trying to raise quail, you're actually raising hawks because they get too fat to fly after a while. But I think it'll balance out eventually. If the quail have a place to hide and a place to find refuge, then they'll be okay. It's just, and of course, I've been in other places in Georgia where they have really a lot of quail. They deal with the same problem we deal, and they manage them fairly well. But quail is the only thing we're really trying to cultivate, so to speak, to get back in the numbers. But everything else seems to come in. I've never seen a population of coyotes and beaver and all that. When I was a child, I didn't have it. And there were very few deer around. Now, I mean, somebody hits a deer every night around here. And so we must be doing something right.
Can you attribute it to anything?
Less pesticides used as a whole, and I really don't know what else. They introduced turkeys here, and nobody thought turkeys would live, and turkeys would thrive in here. But I think that's, they find plenty of food, they find plenty of cover, and there's no pesticides to bother them. So I think that's the main thing. That when we stop spraying cotton, I noticed a big jump in the number. Everybody accuses us of poisoning the land, but I got many pictures of water turtles out in the fields laying their eggs, and I said, well, we can't be doing too bad.
It's the story of that eagle and what you noticed it was doing and how it was feeding.
We noticed a couple of eagles on one of our irrigation ponds. Stayed a couple of months and then left, but they were fishing, and I didn't understand what they were doing. They always sit in the trees around the pond, and I read up on it, and they mainly eat fish when they can. But they stayed a couple of months. It was really, really interesting to see them. We photographed them and stuff, and then they migrated on. I guess they were going to build a nest somewhere, but we don't have many big trees there to build a nest. And then this year I saw one in one of the peanut fields eating a possum. I said, the sign of the times, America's greatest bird eating a roadkill possum. But he had either killed a possum or picked it up off the road, and he was sitting out in the field eating it. But he tried to fly off with it. It was too big for him. But I think that eagle is a little bit young. But they're all over the place now. And all my life, I thought I'd never see an eagle in the wild, and here they are flying around.
There's a part of it that just wasn't producing.
Yeah.
You put seed in, you put fertilizer in, and nothing was happening. And you discovered it was lime, and then with variable rate lime. And I think you laid off the lime, or you added lime.
I laid off the lime, yeah.
Exactly
That field, we had some spots in the field that weren't producing. And no matter what we did, we increased fertilizer. And where the average pH of the field, when we were before precision ag, average pH of the field was saying that we needed lime, but there were spots in the field that weren't yielding, and they were in good soil and even irrigated soil. And we did about everything we could think of, and had someone to test it from Clemson, and they said the pH was too high. For some reason, those areas, the pH had gotten too high. and even though the average pH was not that high, and it was tying up the manganese. So with precision ag, we stopped liming those areas of the field, and in a couple of years we put out manganese also. But in a couple of years they were back in normal production just by letting the pH come down on its own. And that's one of the things. You know, there's a lot of spots that you can see if you notice the same field year after year, like the average is getting better.
With your precision ag now, you're also doing application of phosphorus and potassium and then micronutrients, and you're doing that also on a variable rate, are you?
Yeah. Now the micronutrients we usually go out when we plant something like wheat. I don't know how we wound up that, but we usually have a blended fertilizer for wheat, and we put our micronutrients out then. Now we variable rate our phosphorus and our potash and our lime. We've not gotten to variable rate in nitrogen yet, but we're working on it.
How about you also told me about variable rate seeding. How has that paid off for you?
This is our first year with variable rate seeding. We took the yield maps from the combine where we combined corn 2 years ago on these fields, and from that we wrote a prescription map to variable rate seeding. That's some really interesting work. We figured out that it's easier to bring the good soil to a higher level than it was the poor soil to a higher level. So what we did is soils that we sort of low yielders, we cut the seed rate back a pretty good bit, and then an average yielding soil type in the field, we sort of left it where it was, and then the higher yielding soils we actually increased the seed rate. And anything outside the irrigation system, we cut the seed rate down tremendously. We're gambling on, well, anything outside of watered area, we know what our average is over a period of time. So there's no need of putting more seed there than you can use on an average over a period of time. So we're cutting our cost back a pretty good bit. I can't remember exactly what it is per acre, but we more than paid for all that technology the first year in seed savings, and also our yields have come up. The land outside the water, if it doesn't have enough rain, it actually does better on a lower plant population. And the weak areas in there, they're never going to do it so much, so we just cut the seed back on. Next would be to cut the fertilizer back on. There's two schools of thought. One is, can you make the poor soil better, or you just quit spending so much money on it?
And once you've got us, why don't you sit down for a moment? What you can also do is pan across the field in a little while.